HumanX Ventures presents Inside the Coaching Mind. Terry Pettit coached the University of Nebraska's first national championship team in 1995 and put the state of Nebraska on a path to volleyball greatness. Now, Terry mentors coaches, writes books, and gives talks about leadership and team building to corporate and business audiences. Here's Coach Pettit to take us inside the coaching mind.
Thank you, David Young. We're really privileged to have Jamie Morrison with us today. And Jamie led Texas A&M to their first national championship this past December. Really a storybook ending, and man, you've only been there 3 years. And
crazy.
I mentioned to you earlier that there have been times as I've been looking forward to this podcast, I saw parallels with Indiana University. Texas A&M volleyball has been more successful than Indiana football, but still going from a program that had not advanced to a Final Four and had not until your arrival been in an NCAA match in a few years, and in 3 years moving toward winning a national championship. Man, I can't say enough good things about you and your staff and what you did and how you played and how your team played under pressure. So the first thing is what a wonderful thing. I guess my first question is, what did you think the next morning when you woke up?
First, it's an honor and privilege to be here. You and I have talked a lot just about building programs and things along those lines. And so it's an honor to be on this and to be having this conversation. It's interesting because I don't normally overreact to wins or losses when we have them. And usually the next morning, if we have a big loss, I'll wake up and I'll kind of treat it calmly at that night. And I'll wake up in that morning and realize it's a reality. And some bad word will probably come out of my mouth before I get out of bed. And this was the opposite. We woke up with the realization that we did something that this school had never done before. Realization that it hit a little bit more and more as weeks go on. And I think everybody on our staff has had a moment where we've had to say, we won a national championship. Lindsay was just, I don't know, at a wedding, and we were talking about this, and she came back and somebody had asked, oh, how was your season? And they didn't know volleyball. And she got to say out loud at that moment, oh, we won the national championship. And there's just different times that it hits harder. And I'd be curious to hear your story on this too, the first time. But for me, the times that it really hit when I realized that we're only the 13th program to ever do it. There was a legacy piece to it, and that I was the 14th, I think, head coach to ever do it. Those two things that happened a week or two later are actually bigger than the day after.
Wow, that's impressive. When I spoke to my daughter Emma, who played volleyball at Villanova, she came in the year after Kim left. And
Gotcha.
Jamie's spouse is Kim Maroon, who is a libero, an All-American libero at Villanova. And Emma was a very good player. She was all regional, but she says, Dad, you don't know how hard it is to be an All-American playing at Villanova. And I think she meant not that the program isn't strong, but it's not a power conference. And so you don't get as much recognition. I remember watching Kim win a match at Notre Dame in which their setter had a hand in a bandage and could only block with one hand. It was a pretty remarkable playing. You have one child, Andy, who what is she, 2 or 3 years old?
No, she's 3.5, gonna be 4 in April.
3.5.
You've done your homework.
Okay. And about to have a second child. So
Yep.
Life is wonderful for you right now. The first thing I'd like to ask you, the more I thought about this, that if somebody dropped in right now and hadn't been around college sport in the last 20 years, that you might be the person most qualified to deal with certain things. You weren't a college coach before there was a head coach, before there was NIL. You weren't a college head coach before there was whether or not you received funding from the university or people could transfer at will. So you probably didn't have the negative feeling about those things that some established coaches have. I mean, it's just what it was, what you had to deal with. Is that a fair statement?
Completely. And we've actually had talks about this. And the interesting piece is, yeah, I'm really trying to create the in between of this because I was in the professional world. Like I'd been at Vakifunk where you're dealing with 1 year contracts and people are coming in and coming out, and you're trying to build this core and have people coming around it. And I literally left because I didn't necessarily want to be a part of that, of like this transactional nature of the professional world that like you're paying for someone to come into your program for 1 year. And I tried to come back to this place. And when I was with League One, we were really trying to build this, I don't know, pathway from youth to pro. And I felt like we were missing out on this college gap of like this 4 year that's really, really important of taking somebody from the 18 to the point where they're an adult at 22 and going out to be a professional, whether it be in the volleyball world, whether it be in the business world, or whether it be as a parent. And I wanted to go, I don't know, help bridge that gap is what I realized. I think felt like I was put on this planet to go coach. And so I came back, but it's actually been this weird, happy blend. And I've had this talk with my staff just of, I don't know, the money piece and everything. Like, they're like, at least you've done this before, where there's a lot of coaches that haven't. And I think I don't know, the fact that I've seen what it could turn into in terms of the transactional thing, I'm digging my feet into the sand to say, no, this is still going to be about relationships, and it's still going to be about mentoring, and it's still going to be about development. But how do we balance those two things? And I think it's something we're all battling with a little bit. But I think I got this weird, I don't know, skill set that because I've been in all these different places and I was kind of dropped into the college world because I wanted to be in it at a time of crazy change, I'm a little bit more equipped than probably some.
Well, I understand how a coach can go and see a player in another team who enters the portal and evaluate their talent. But in the amount of time that you have, how can you evaluate character or find out whether or not they're going to fit into your culture? How do you do that?
I think some of it's a feeling. I think one of my biggest things is when I get on the phone, I just ask myself the question based on the conversation, like, does this person care about me? And like I think that's a two-way street of care. It's like, well, we care about them, and like if they care about me, they're going to care about their teammates. So if we get on a phone call and I feel like this is genuine and authentic, and like we're going back and forth, and like there's a genuine sense of care, like I think that's the first, I don't know, gateway to, is can this happen? But yeah, it happens in a hurry. And I think you got to get to the bottom of that as quickly as you can. But like that's really kind of the litmus test that I try to get to.
Well, I noticed a word when I was preparing for our podcast today, behaviors, 5 behaviors. And I'm behavior oriented. When people ask me about leadership, I say, well, I can't separate it from decision and behaviors. What are you committed to? So talk about the 5 behaviors that uh, Texas A&M
Yeah,
volleyball built around.
I don't. Here's the problem that and like one, this goes down to, and I give credit where credit's due. Like when I was in the Netherlands, I had a team manager actually. His name was Mark DeHaan, and he had his degree in psychology, and he worked in the advertising world about like trying to change behaviors of people through advertising. And the one thing he always talked about, we always usually have these core tenets that we draw on a wall. And whenever like I would talk about those, he's like, "What behavior are you looking for?" And it got to the point where it was annoying. I was like, "Mark, like I get you want to be about behaviors, but it really kind of to hammer home of like, I can't hold anybody accountable to a word. I can hold them accountable to a behavior." And I
Right.
always am really weary of telling people what ours are because I think they're different for different people. And I always tell
Mhm.
any coach that I'm ever talking to, and I can say that like Kim and I were talking about this after the national championship run, and you brought up Indiana, and like there were a lot of people that wouldn't hire Kurt Signetti. Like I kind of had the similar thing where there were things going on, and like I went to the Netherlands and I was there and I got let go. And during the time that I got let go for that next 3 or 4 years, I really boiled things down to what is it that I'm about? What do I want to hold people accountable to every single day? But it really came down to what was important to me. Again, that care piece, like you got to care about me if you're going to be a part of this volleyball program. You got to care about every person on the staff, every teammate. Like, there's got to be a care piece, and there's some behaviors, but like, and I'm going to go to, I don't know, I'll
Well,
give this
well,
like,
Jamie, where does that come from? I mean, how did you come
uh,
to that
that
conclusion?
one selfishly, like I used to talk a lot about like I don't know if we're going to win a national championship here, and then all of a sudden it happened in year three because all these things add up to like that's the goal, but it's not really like we're trying to develop, we're trying to get people to care about each other, we're trying to do all these things in the hope of winning a national championship. But some of it was just I've been around the world and I've had a lot of experiences and I've won some things, and where I came to, I wanted to enjoy going to work every single day. So a little bit of it was selfish of like, hey, I want to enjoy walking into my practice gym and having a conversation with all of our athletes and knowing that, like, I don't know, 10 years down the road. And the other thing I realized, and Kim made this really apparent, you've already talked about her time at Villanova, but like, and this job's hard. And I remember coming home one day and being like, this is hard. And she just reminded me that part of my job is building community. And like, she just went to a girls' weekend down with her old teammates. And like, the fact that they're still talking 10 years later, that's part of my job, is to build community around this. But also selfishly, like, I've been here 3 years. I've had some players that have graduated, but they've returned back and come over to my house and spent 3 hours just talking. And like that's why I'm here. Like, I want to build that community. I want to build people that are going to come back and be a part of my life. And again, part of that, I say this in the recruiting process, is I'm sharing some of the stuff of like, part of our recruiting process also is like, hey, as I'm going through it, you need to be an example for my 3.5-year-old daughter. Like, again, going back to the selfish piece, like, I want people that she's 3.5. She knows all of our girls' names, their numbers, their personality, and everything about them. And she's modeling a lot of her behavior based on what our athletes are doing. So one of our team rules is don't do anything that would, I don't know, be a bad example to any of the 9 kids we have on campus. It's one of our team rules, or on our staff.
Right.
So yeah, like, I don't know, we talk, like, I'll give one of them, just, this is a behavior. Like, we talk a lot about being golden retrievers in our program when it comes to volleyball. And what I mean by that is, if somebody shanks a ball, there's no, can I go get it? I turn and I go chase it the way a golden retriever would a tennis ball. And we just try to, I don't know, boil things down to behaviors like that we can hold people accountable to. But just simple things like that. And you think you need to go. And again, this is where, like, my eye will notice somebody not doing that. But if somebody, a coach that's listening, so goes and steals Jamie Morrison said golden retriever, I'm going to do it, and their eyes don't catch it, their athletes are going to just, and we talk a lot about those behaviors at the beginning of the season. If you don't hold your athletes accountable to those, then all of a sudden you're just, I don't know, being a hypocrite of saying this is important to me, but it really isn't. So I just encourage all coaches to really sit down to, where does my eye go mixed with what is important to us winning? Because I think those two things have to be in there. And then really sit down and boil it down to, like, hey, here are the behaviors that I'm going to hold my athletes accountable to every single day.
Hmm. I'm going to jump into the tournament here for a little bit. Down 0-2 to Louisville. You know, I'm probably wrong about this because we tend to put too much importance on a single play. You know, we go back and say, there's the turning point. But in that third set, and I watched it live, Louisville was making a run, and you came out of the timeout, and Kendall Stowers kind of came inside out on the outside and cut a ball sharp cross court and down.
You remember the play?
And you know, I was clapping when I saw it, and I guess I was thinking a couple things that some of you might disagree with here too. But one, it was a remarkable attack. The second thing that I was thinking of about it is, when that attacker comes inside out, she's much more likely to hit that ball than she is when she's outside in. And that's that's something that I taught our blockers. Jumping forward to the Nebraska match here, television isn't the best place to watch a match, because all the 99% of the fans think you're better off at the 50-yard line, but as a coach, you'd much rather be in the end zone. So I really couldn't tell certain things, but my feeling was that the Nebraska block was struggling with the tempo of the sets. My inclination would be, and I share this with coaches, and I never see them do it, but I would release the right side blocker, and rather than have her making a late move out there on a quick tempo set. Now I know that's kind of counterintuitive to what Gold Medal Squared does, but what are your thoughts on that? When you run into a team that is just firing the ball out there, and you're either getting used or not setting up the block? I didn't see any 31s being run, not consistently. So why not
Yeah.
release that play and make sure you get a good block set up?
I think the problem, and again, like I said this all year, like, I thought us and Nebraska were the two most balanced teams in the country. Like if they released the right side blocker, we would probably start running a little bit more middle blocker. So it's just one of those things where it's like you got to pick your poison at some point in there. And again, like you might do it every once in a while and then mix, but you're kind of going a risk reward thing there as much as you can. And to be honest with you, like I haven't gone back and watched that match yet, just because and I think people don't realize how quick the turnaround is from the Elite Eight to the Final Four, and like you got a day and a half to kind of turn around and get on the road, and the amount of logistics to go into it. So, but I think one of the things that made our team really, really hard to beat is we had a really, really, really good setter that could set every part of the court. We had really good attackers in all places. And it was hard to kind of pick your poison on what you were going to try to stop. And you had to try to be good everywhere. And once you do that, it's really hard. And I thought there were some adjustments that happened in that match that we were able to adjust to from an offensive standpoint. But I think, again, going back to the Louisville match too, it just like we also were one of the rangiest teams in the country. I think if you look at Kendall Stowers, like she's got a huge toolkit that she's able to do a bunch of different things in. And she's really kind of, I don't know, made all of those things a piece of her to the point where she can adapt to different situations within it too.
Yeah, she was remarkable. Well, entering the Nebraska match, what was an adjustment that you had to make in the match you maybe hadn't anticipated? Was there anything that came about that you thought,
No.
well,
And this is just for other coaches too. I think whenever I just literally just had this talk with another coach, whenever you're developing your systems, I think they should be developed around who you want to beat. And when I first came in here, our systems were really developed around how do we make the NCAA tournament in terms of the teams we had to beat to go get to that point. And the adjustments that we made to our systems were a little bit based on how do we beat the top 5 teams in the country. So that when we got to that point, it wasn't we're having to adjust to anything. This is just what we've been working on all season. So there weren't a ton of adjustments. And the interesting about this NCAA tournament was just a lot of the things. Again, I'm not a big fate guy. I think just I'm a big believer that I don't know, you build your own destiny. But there were some weird things that happened. Like we lost to Texas, for example. And I told our team this, just like we built on some stuff and some storytelling within this, but we lost to Texas in the SEC tournament. I have a journal that I sit down and I write like what our starting lineup's going to be and what rotations and the matchups I'm looking for. And it's a little bit of a meditation for me to just go about the same thing every single practice or every single match. So I kind of have a sheet for each, I don't know, match that we go through. And we got done with that match, and I'm kind of like writing my notes in afterwards that I do. And I'm like, man, I'm running out of pages here. Like, do I need to put another insert in here? I have a journal that I can insert more pages into. So I like start counting, and I had exactly 6 pages left in this journal. And I was like, man, that's really bizarre that all of a sudden I have the exact number of matches that we have to win to go win a national championship. And I think I said this right before the Final Four. And the other thing that was really interesting is these matches kind of built on each other. And some of the stuff that was unique, like TCU kind of we built on some stuff that they were doing that all of a sudden Louisville was doing, and some of the stuff that Louisville doing, like Nebraska was doing. And then we kind of got into Pitt, and Pitt was doing some stuff that kind of happened. And I'm like, this is really bizarre that like we'd kind of worked on some stuff that kind of led into that match. And then just again, like I felt like we were both really well balanced teams. And I think throughout that whole thing, like we don't run a lot of slide in our gym. So I was getting used to kind of blocking Andy and kind of, and Becca and kind of what was going on in those 2 things. But we'd seen that a little bit with Kara Kresge in the Louisville match, kind of prep for that also. So like these things kind of built on each other where there weren't really a ton of adjustments, and there's not a lot of time. Like you're trying to get your bodies right for that match just because you got the day off, and we went through a 5-set marathon of trying to make sure we get our bodies calm a little bit and then get yourself playing good volleyball. And that's the thing that matters the most. And like there's adjustments that you're going to make, but it's really about who's going to stay true to who you are as a volleyball team within those pressure moments.
and some of it is happenstance in this sense. I didn't realize this till I looked at the box score, and Louisville the year before lost or won I believe it was a 5th set against Northern Iowa, in which Northern Iowa missed 5 serves in the 5th set. And the 3rd set against Louisville this year, Louisville missed 6 serves and hit, I think they hit like 340, maybe 360 in that set and lost. But that's just the nature of the game. Things like that happened. I think we also need a new term. It's a different DS. I think every team has to have a disruptive server. Somebody somebody that is capable of blowing up a set. And I come to that because I look at Nebraska the last 3 years has entered the tournament with statistically the best passing team in the country. Each time they've lost the match, there has been a disruptive server and that server and in your case it was Kos Opala,
Yep.
who the All-American middle blocker. But you know, when I first saw that serve, I thought, "Holy cow!" But I saw the same thing a couple years ago with Texas when with their middle blocker who's gone on and played professionally. But I don't understand why every team doesn't have somebody on the team on their roster, even if they're not a regular starter, that can't
Yep.
come in and do something that remarkable.
Yeah.
Talk about her development in that area. I don't did she's not at what point during her career did she begin serving, and at what
Uh,
point um
yeah. I go through the whole thing. And the other one I just want to point out is I think there's just things that people don't get credit for. Like the second one on our team was Tatum Thomas, who was in that second libero
right,
jersey, and she came in and point scored at 50% in the NCAA tournament,
right,
and just played really good defense. And if you look at, I don't know, like the unsung heroes, we talk a lot about just the people that we're going to give credit to that do kind of the small things. Just her role, she embraced it, went for it, and did stuff. So. But yeah, I serve one. Anybody that comes into our volleyball program is going to be trained to be a volleyball player. So if you're a middle blocker, you're going to learn how to serve. So that started from the day I got here. And then I really kind of just, I'm a student of this game. I like studying it. I like trying to stay ahead of it. And I feel like the men's game is always a little bit further ahead of the women's by like 3 or 4 years. So this last spring, and I do it right now, like every Sunday, I just throw on A1 in Italy and just like I put on Volleyball World and just let it play. And it goes from match to match to match. And just try to pick apart some stuff that they're doing in their game that I want to add. And we just played around a lot with the serves this last spring, and did some different things with spins and bends and some different things. And it kind of stuck with her and a couple other people. And and yeah, some other people had some variations on some stuff, but with her, it kind of happened. And then all of a sudden we got into the fall and we didn't have her serving in the very beginning. She wasn't 100% confident. And then there was kind of a week where it kind of clicked and I'm like, all right, here we go. Let's put you in a match. And I think she was at like 1.3 aces per set or something like that when we kind of first put her in. And then people scouted her a little bit and we had to make some adjustments and do some different things on it to get people a little bit on edge a little bit more. And she embraced those. So I think it's the two things. And again, I know you got coaches on here, I know you got fans, but for the coaches, like let your volleyball players be volleyball players. And just because someone is a middle blocker doesn't mean they shouldn't train how to serve. And then all of a sudden it was also let them play. And that last spring, we just played a lot. And it was like, hey, play around with this and play around with this. And for certain people, it became like this different thing. And I think the other thing in our program we do a really good job of is not trying to make robots or cookie cutter images of a volleyball player, but trying to build upon superpowers. And with her, all of a sudden, this thing stuck and we built upon the superpowers some more. And it turned into a weapon, like you said, that could be a disruptor against other teams.
uh, um, well, I thought she was and the other thing about that, a person that serves that well, I always felt it impacted other rotations as well. Like it's it's like an explosion. You're hearing the waves for the next few minutes because if 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 she disrupts a six rotation player, that player, unless they're really experienced, may carry that
Yep.
negativity when they move to the front row, and it may impact their focus, their attack, their blocking. So I thought that was a critical factor. Where did Texas A&M improve the most from your loss to Texas in the conference tournament through the tournament? Where did you feel that and it may be mentally?
Honestly, like, I don't think there was. I think we look back at that four set against Texas and we wanted that to push it to five. And like when we talked in the locker room, and it was interesting because like we hadn't done a conference tournament before, but it almost feel like you died and came back to life. And like I talked to multiple of our players about this because normally like you're that far into the season and you lose and you're like and you're in a tournament setting and you don't get to play tomorrow. You're like, well, the season's over. And it was almost like losing kind of gave us this feeling of like, well, like we already did it once. We might as well go out and play our rear ends off for the rest of the season. So I think it was, hey, like we're not done yet. And I think the fact that we had, I think if the tournament was that next weekend, it would have been bad because it was almost like we were so down about it. But then it was like, all right, we gave them 2 or 3 days off. We had Thanksgiving, we went away and we came back and there was just like, we have this new life and we really kept, and I think I'm going to go to this also, like that loss didn't rock me as much, but I think us as coaches always have these moments, and you can probably attest to this, where you lose 2 or 3 in a row and you're doing it the right way, but all of a sudden you have these moments of doubt where you're like, do I know what I'm doing? And I remember this happened, I think it was last year, year one, when I was here, where I was like, no, like, I really like took a look at it. And I'm like, hey, do we need to change anything? And when I look back, I was like, no, we need to double down on the things that we think are important. And I think in this instance, we didn't have any doubt, but it was just, we went about just harping on the things that we thought were important some more. And we went about practice getting ready for those first 2 teams we were going to play. So I didn't think there were really, I don't know, drastic improvements there. If you go to the beginning of the year, end of the year, to what you talked about Louisville having 6 unforced errors, our first match of the year against Minnesota, we won a set having 14 unforced errors. And just one of the things that we talked about was just the fact that like this is going to be a lot easier to be, or a lot harder to beat us if we reduce these down to 3 or 4. And I actually showed Nebraska was at about 3 unforced errors a set of like, it's really hard to beat a team in this if we're like giving them more points, like make teams score 22, 23 points to beat us. And it's going to be really, really hard. And I think that's the biggest area we probably improved as the season went on. But I also don't think we would have been the team that we were without, I don't know, being that terminal at the beginning. Like I think you got to teach teams to be aggressive and then pull the reins back a little bit. So I think it was a balance of those 2 things. But if I were to go beginning of the year to end of the year, it's probably that. And if I were to go, I don't know, end of the year on, I think there was just a confidence that kind of came about us that we were capable of going out and doing something special.
So do I sense that you're pro conference tournament now?
I actually just told Commissioner Sankey that I literally worded it like this: "There's 3 words you never want to say to your spouse, and you were right was one of them, or 3 of them." And he'd been pushing for it, but like I just think there were a lot of positives to it. Of it gave us those pressure situations with a feeling of finality. And again, if you when I call you and talk, there's a program building and a conference building of like it put something meaningful on TV that week that people were willing to tune into. And I think the country was a little bit divided on it. And all of a sudden, the volleyball was amazing, and like it meant something, and everyone's like, "This is amazing." And I think you're probably going to see other conferences follow suit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and just I was talking to some other coaches in the conference right after we lost, and like at the end of the day, like that was a really, I don't know, valuable moment for us to get a rep of what it feels like to be in the tournament without actually being in the tournament.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you tactically. I think you lost to Kentucky on your floor in October, and then 2 months later, you're playing against them for a national championship. So
Yep.
tactically, I mean, I can't imagine that both head coaches and staffs know the other teams as well as they can. But entering the match tactically, did you change anything from the first time you played them?
A little bit. One, we got, again, going back to this, like I think everyone's like, "Hey, what did you change?" Like we got a lot better. Like I remember being really worried about that matchup. But I just went back and watched, and like I thought Logan and Maddie both became like exceptionally good right side blockers when I was watching that match from the first time to the second time. And I remember going and watching, I don't know, the Nebraska match, and like I remember going to scout that Kentucky match, and I'm like, man, we are such a better volleyball team right now, and I got really excited.
Hmm.
But I mean, they were very left side dominant, and there were some tactics that kind of went around that from a block and defensive standpoint. And then again, I think offensively, the balance piece was really, really hard to defend us. And I think the other piece just we got better and better and better as a passing team throughout the season.
Hmm.
And I thought as we got near the end of it, like when I did some analytics on the SEC tournament, and I think nationally too, like we were 1 in the conference in passing. And I think we've really kind of, I don't know, had some breakthroughs on how to train that skill. I remember Karch and I used to talk about like we felt like we could only make a 5% improvement, and I think we can make a much larger one now. But I thought that skill kind of got better and better and better to the point at the end. I was like, man, we're going to be in system a lot here. Then I thought we got better. And going back to your serving, I meant to say this earlier with your serving conversation. I think the other piece too, and this is just for juniors coaches that are listening, like the 2 most influential moments in a rally are when you're serving and when you're passing. And just if you look at, I don't know, analytics on like how that rally is going to turn out on the end of it, like that is the number one thing that's going to influence things. So just, I don't know, spend time serving is the other thing I would just suggest to people. That skill is going to be really important, and it's something that has to be developed across all athletes. But I thought those two skills really improved for us throughout the year. So I felt like we were going to be able to put pressure, and I thought we were going to be able to withstand pressure. So a lot of my confidence really came from those things. But and again, going back to this, like we didn't have a lot of time. Like I don't know, practice the day before, and like we couldn't do, like Maddie had the flu and I had to pull her at practice for half of it. So like we couldn't have our setter in practice for that entire day. So it was like we couldn't really do a lot. And everyone thinks like all these tactics are going to happen. There's small adjustments to what you're doing. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I went back and looked at this again. I think in the Nebraska match there were at least a dozen times where A&M scored on balls off the block, where the left side player, right side player is using the block. I think there were less than half a dozen that Nebraska was in that situation. Nebraska's got a tremendous setter. So, I would need more data to see, but I don't know how in high level volleyball you can score consistently without using the block a significant amount of time, and that came up in that. So I'm sure that that's probably something that you work on all the time, and
Never, no, it's something we work on all the time. Yeah.
well, a couple other things I saw that you do. When people say I want to be a coach or I want to be a Division I coach, they think basically it's what happens between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock. But I know that 4 times a year you were giving chalk talks to, I'm assuming, boosters or for development reasons. You had over 9,000 people at a match. I'm sure this year you want to take advantage of the success you've had and boost that up. A lot of developing coaches might say, well, that's not my problem. That's somebody else's. But that's not the case. And, you know, and I'm sure there are even some things that have happened at Texas A&M because you have resources that maybe you didn't witness when you were a volunteer assistant at Cal Santa Barbara, that there's so many things you can leverage. So what are some of the things that, if you want to have a top program, kids want to play in front of people. It's no longer the closer you are to the ocean. They want to play in front of fans. What are some of the things that, as a head coach, you do that people might not be aware of to create that type of atmosphere?
A lot. But I think I had some questions that I was going to ask you on this too. So I'd actually like to pick your brain on it too. But like we really break things down into two meetings, and I really think of it this way: we have a 360 out meeting and a 360 in meeting. And their 360 in meeting is everyone that's going to influence our athletes directly. So it's our coaches, it's our sports science, our strength and conditioning, our athletic training, our academics, our sports psychology, all of these things. And you got to, I don't know, manage those to have this orchestra around your athletes that's helping them be the best that they can be. And then we have a 360 out meeting that is basically everybody that's going to influence, and I call it the user experience of the people around our program. So that's the user experience of people that are going to come into our arena, the user experience of people that are going to watch us on TV, the user experience of how somebody is going to interact with our program on social media. Like all of these things matter. And to what you said, like for me, there's reasons why I do it. There's an economic reason. We're in a rev share era, and like I want to bring revenue in. Like I really came here and like I interviewed on, I don't know, the process of that 4-year plan that I really wanted to be this gateway of 18-year-olds becoming professionals. I also said that I want to be the second program to be profitable. And it's something that was important to me. And there's, I don't know, an entrepreneurial spirit in me that if I wasn't doing this, I'd have a startup and like I'd do some stuff with Kirsten Booth with Neurofuel. And like I own a piece of that startup, and the mental side of the game is really important to me. So just encourage people to check that out too. But like, I love that side of it. And I think if anybody that wants to be, I don't know, a head coach, they need to have an understanding that, and I had this talk with a booster, and I can't remember if it was a legal firm or run a medical practice, but we were joking around that like it's almost laughable that you become so good at what you do that at some point you start doing the thing less. And I think that's just when you become a head coach, like you start coaching a little bit less. And I think it's one of the things that we're all struggling with is some of the things that are important to our program. The, I don't know, attendance pieces, the revenue sharing pieces, they're all pulling us a little bit away from volleyball and we're trying to hold on. But I talked to, I don't know, have Jeff Fiorenza is going to be an amazing head coach one day. I talk to him all the time. I'm like, enjoy being an assistant. Like it's the time where you kind of get to dive into this one piece of kind of this pie of like the stuff outside of it, but you really get to get engrossed in coaching. And I still run our practice gym, but there's pieces of it that I get pulled away at times where I have to go to an SEC head coaches meeting or I have to go meet with a booster, do these things. So I think if I were to give advice, it's this: understand you're running a business. Understand that, and I say this all the time. I literally just we talked amongst our SEC head coaches on this. Like, if you leave things alone, like our sport needs to be marketed different than basketball. Our sport needs to be produced differently than basketball. And I think one of the things that's beautiful and amazing about it is you get these quick little stoppages in time for like 10 or 15 seconds. And I always think of, I don't know, this, like each set of volleyball is like a crescendoing orchestra that's happening where it's getting louder and louder and louder. And you have this moment at 25 that makes our game absolutely beautiful, where every, I don't know, 22 minutes, you get this moment that's like the end of a March Madness game, possibly. That you have all these little points that add up into this moment, and then like you get this kind of drop for 3 minutes, but if you can keep your crowd going, this thing kind of keeps going to. And again, like if I were to be the best song that's ever been produced, it was that Nebraska match. Like people always ask me, there's like a 10-second clip of me with a giant smile on my face in the middle of the fourth set when it was 32-32, and like what was going through your head? And I'm like, win or lose, this is great for the sport of volleyball.
Yeah.
The fact that like the perennial number one, like they had this underdog that came in and all of a sudden like they're down 0-2. So if you're tuning in, you're like, whoa, are they going to beat them? And then they start coming back. And then we go up big in the fourth and they come back. And I'm like, and for me, like I came back to volleyball to, I don't know, help this tidal wave of the sport that's growing and growing and growing. And I also came back because I missed on being on the edge of win and loss. And that's why we do this, is to go out and compete. So that moment in that set, I was like, this is amazing because it's everything that I came back to the sport to do.
Yeah.
So I think just this understanding that you're good.
And Jamie, the difference there is that some fans just want Texas A&M to go out and win 15, 25-0, 25-0, whatever. They don't care. But sport is unique in that to really reach your potential, you have to have the worthy opponent. You have to have somebody that is as talented as you and is as well coached as you to show your best. And that's what I saw happening in that match.
No, 100%.
Yeah. Well, I think I know how you're going to answer this, but I wish I could get you in private to answer this.
I'll probably answer it honestly.
I don't mean that. What I mean is, I always thought it was an advantage to some degree not to have a rival to the level that Texas and A&M are rivals. By that I mean, in volleyball, our rival initially when I got to Nebraska, the team we're going to have to beat to advance was Purdue. Then it became Illinois. Then it was Penn State. Then it was Stanford. In other words, we would focus our energy on that school, that team. What are they doing? What do we have to beat them to get to a Final Four, to compete for a championship? But man, so I can see a lot of positive things about having a school like Texas be down the road and in your conference. But I can also see the amount of energy that it might sap. You know, it's there's other good teams in the conference. You got Kentucky and Florida, and so what's your thought on that?
I think rivalries are great. And I think I've actually been bringing this up. I think 2 years ago, we tried to create a Caitlin Clark in our sport. And we thought this, but for me, I think our sport is such a team-based sport that I think the rivalries are actually the thing that are going to sell more. And for me, I love the fact that us and Texas are both good. I think we're going to go up against each other for lots of years. And I have a lot of respect for Jarrett, like one of the people I'm closest with. So I like that both programs are good and both programs are going to go after each other whenever we play. And I think that's going to create attendance. That's going to create ratings. Like that's going to create these storylines that go up on this thing if both programs can be really, really good. And I think that's around the country. I think we need to build those up as much as we can. And again, like I don't know, like the best people I've ever competed with, I have a lot of respect for. And like that entire tournament run, like, I mean, Danny and I became head coaches both for the first time in the same year. We used to meet up and I don't know, chat about what we learned that year. And like you go back every single match before that, I know every coach really, really well. And it's not anything where we're trying to tear each other down. We're trying to be our best in those moments. And that's a piece of what we do. So like, I don't think it has to be this like, hey, we hate each other, but it has to be we're both pushing to be the best that we possibly can in the pursuit of going out and winning, and then that will help the sport as a whole. Um, so yeah, I think to what you said, like I again, like I want to go out and I want to beat Texas, and I know that's a big piece of this school's tradition, and like I really want to go out and beat them for that too. And I'm slowly, again, I used to love the color orange, and that's slowly deteriorated a little bit over time, but like. Uh, but yeah, like I got a lot of respect. At the same time, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to beat them the same way that I don't know, Nebraska is going to go out against their rivals.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't see it so much as the conference rival as the fact that we were both in the same state and
Yeah.
geographically. Um, you mentioned Caitlin Clark. You said a couple years ago we tried to create that. Who was that with, or what was the thinking?
I just think it was like trying to point out an individual on every single team. I think there was a push to kind of do that, and I think you can look at Maddie Skinner a little bit of that, but like I think it was just on all teams. It was like we're trying to create this one person that we're trying to build this thing around. And for me, like this sport is so team based that like I think you can get pieces of that, but I don't know if the Caitlin Clark thing is ever going to fully stand out. Just because like you need those other pieces order of it to go succeed. Like you need to have a pass, you need to have a setter, you need to have all of these things. And like for me, and again, this is just my take. Like I just think this can we make this about those rivalries as much as possible and storytell around those more. I think that'll build our sport more than necessarily like finding a Caitlin Clark and what happened in basketball.
Yeah, yeah. One of the best things about the sport is after every play, teams teammates come together, slap hands, and
Yep.
there's positive energy, even if they lost the point. Yeah, I
Yep.
don't know of any other sport that
No.
that
And I can tell you, like my time working with Love and talking to investors, and like that was one of the things they love the most is like there's these moments of humanity that happen in between where you get to see the celebration or this disappointment, and like it's this constant, I don't know, 30 seconds of excitement that end in a point that's followed by emotion that gets to get zoomed in on, and like it's not a hard sell. And like I can tell you just with the run we had and like the people that I talk to, like I get so many people that are like, man, I've never watched your sport before, but this is amazing. And like the second thing is I get, how do you still have a heartbeat with how stressful this is? Of every single point matters, and you get all these crescendo moments at the end of every set. But again, like I don't think there's another game like ours, and it's easy to sell. It's easy to get people to buy into as soon as they see it for the first time.
well, you mentioned Jarrett. I think for at least one season you were a volunteer coach there, and I had the
I was.
feeling that maybe you were working with the setters. Is that accurate? Uh,
This.
and I mean this in a very positive way because I felt there was a drop off when you left. I thought you did a great job
I
working with the
appreciate
set.
that.
What year was that?
Uh, I was there. I can't remember the years. It was the year we lost to Kentucky. So that was my rematch against Kentucky in the finals, and then I was there for half of that next season, and then I took that job at League One.
Okay, all right. And what was your role at League One?
So when I got brought on, I think it was employee number 9, and it was a startup. So we all wore a lot of hats, but my time was split in half. It was building the backbone of what that professional league would look like. So timing of hire players, who to talk to, what agents to talk to. I don't know, the salary structure that we would do to make it sustainable. I was helping a little bit with the fundraising of making sure they had a runway to get that going. And then the second half was working with the clubs that are involved in League One. And I basically kind of put together a weekly call to talk to, I called it the coach of coaches, and one person with each team and trying to share the knowledge that I'd had from my time with the national team and what I'd learned. And kind of putting some structure around educating coaches on, I don't know, how to coach this game and kind of building some autonomy around the clubs of them kind of having it, giving it their own feeling, but at the same time having something that united all teams in terms of the way we were going to treat athletes and the way that we were going to coach.
What needs to happen for professional volleyball, women's professional volleyball? We've got two full-time
Yeah.
professional leagues, and I don't know if Athletes Unlimited is still going. They did a wonderful
Just
job in kickstarting everything.
yep.
But if you could say three things need to happen, what are those three things for at least a league to move forward and be successful?
The first one that comes to mind is something I'm trying to work on right now is we as college programs need to feed our fandom to the pro leagues. And I just think right now you have people and part of the reason why I came to a school that has the tradition of the 12th man here is I know how passionate these sports fans are about sports. It was, can I get them to fall in love with volleyball because they're A&M fans? They want to support A&M. Can I educate them? Like you brought up, I don't know, we have a Maroon Club where we talk to our boosters and things along those lines. Like I joke around with them. Like my number one goal is to educate them enough that they could get to the end of a match and tell me I'm an idiot. Because I think if you have an opinion about something, like honestly, if you have an opinion, good or bad about something, you're doing something that matters. But I want them to be educated so that they become volleyball fans. And then, like, can we feed that to these pro leagues? Because right now, I think we're going to create a little bit more fandom and be able to attract eyeballs. And then I think we need to, and then this was my time at League One. Like, you have, and this is going back to that idea of like, you got to know what audiences you're trying to build. And again, when you separate these audience into this stuff, you have, I don't know, when I look at like this and how I'm going to feed stuff, I have educated volleyball fans that are easy to feed. I have mildly educated, I don't know, A&M fans that are mildly educated of can I get them over there? And then I have people that are just A&M fans that don't know volleyball yet. I think one of the things we need to do in all of these pro endeavors is how do we get the casual sports fan attracted to our game in ways that they understand enough. Like, for example, I know getting rid of the double call was controversial and I understand these things, but if you're a casual sports fan, and I always use this analogy, if I was watching the NFL and a quarterback threw a wobbly pass and the referee blew it dead in the middle of it, you'd be like, why did you stop that play? It was just a bad pass. And for me, the double rule was a little bit along those lines of like, it's just a bad set and it's going to be a horrible location. And it's not giving that team an advantage in order to go do this. It's actually a disadvantage, but it makes it more digestible for that casual sports fan. So just
It was
how
a
can
one. It
we,
was a
go ahead.
wonderful change. I mean,
Yeah,
every outstanding rally where the ball went across the net eight, nine times likely involved at least one contact that could have been called before.
yeah,
It made the game much better.
yeah,
My feeling about promoting the sport, I I felt this has to be an event. This has to be a major event. And
yeah, I
so
agree.
it involved lighting, it involved so many things that at the time the school didn't know, why are you concerned about these things? But I know when the pro leagues began, when I listened to some of the people in them, they said, "Well, we don't want it to be a college atmosphere. What's wrong with a great college atmosphere where people are
Yeah,
going crazy?"
yeah,
And
I,
the one place that has done a good job of that are the supernovas. But you can't, I don't think the model needs to be what happens and I don't know because I've never been there, but I don't know what happens in Croatia or what happens in Italy. Our fans are used to having big moments and,
yeah.
and getting excited. So, uh, yeah,
No, but to
I'm,
your credit, I'm going to go back to this at International. I think that he did a really good job. But when they basically moved the business model in the FIVB to the VNL, they hired Finn, and I can't remember Finn's last name. I've talked to him quite a bit, but he came from Circus Olay. And his whole thing was like, how do you put on a show? And like the lighting piece was a piece of it, the sound was a piece of it, the jingles that the crowd can interact with, like all of these things were a piece of it. And going back to what I talked about at the beginning of this, when you're talking about like people that were becoming head coaches and like how do you build these things? It's how do you entertain these audiences? And I think you got different audiences within your audience. You have families, you have students, you have I don't know people that are boosters. Like you have all these. Like how do you entertain all of them at the same time? so that they want to come back. But I think this is the same thing with these pro leagues. And then how do you show it on TV? Like, again, you were talking about it earlier about the 50-yard line. Like, and I know it's a big change, but like, I love that our SEC championships, and I'm hopefully going to talk to ESPN on this next week. They brought in a boom camera for the back. And I think you need some dynamic movement back there, but our game is so much more enjoyable. And we are the only, and again, like, I've asked for this change, and people usually fight for it when they show it. We're the only net sport that's out there that broadcasts our game from the 50-yard line. You watch tennis, table tennis, like all of these things that have a net in the middle of it, they're all broadcast from back there because you get to see the spacing of it a little bit more.
Right.
But it's a hard change. And you go into any gym, you go into any of our gym, and like, I can tell you, like, our entire, I don't know, extended family of everybody on my staff comes from volleyball, and we had these nice 50-yard line seats that they gave us as staff ticketing, and like they just sat empty, and like our entire staff was in the end zone. So I just think it's, how do you go entertain those audiences is the other piece. But I do think the international game has done a lot of positive things in that. So, and I think these pro leagues are starting to pick up on that. It's just, again, like now it's how do we feed our fandom to them, and how do you get these casual sports fans, and how do you get it on linear so that when people are tuning through, and again, like part of the reason, again, I'm in the middle of that Nebraska match, I knew it was on ABC. And I knew there was probably some people that were tuning in that became volleyball fans, and that brought a smile to my face. Just that, like, hey, like we were able to put on a show in this moment that people are going to tune in, get captivated by the drama of it, get captivated by the level of play. I thought that was one of the highest, I don't know, levels of play in a college volleyball match in a really long time. But I thought that was a really good exhibition for that. But again, the next thing for those, like those pro leagues is, can you get one of those matches on ABC? Can you get people to tune in and understand that's going on? And I think that's the next step, is how do you attract those casual fans?
Yeah. I think it helps when you have a color person in particular who is a former coach and can explain some nuances of the game. Yeah, you mentioned the Caitlin Clark. The only person that, when you said that flashed was Misty May when she was at Long Beach. She might have been the type of person who could have, you
Yeah.
could have focused on her. But I think you're right. It's the team aspect that people really enjoy. Something
And
that
I think you need that. Like, I'm just going back. I think you need that. You need people that can transcend the sport. And I think Harp's done that a little bit at Nebraska, of like, she's showing up on ESPN ads and things along those lines. It's just, I think it needs to happen organically, one. And again, I think it, like, the team piece and the rivalry piece is the thing I think that will sell our sport more. So like, if we can do both, that's amazing. And I'm not saying don't go do it.
right,
I just think it needs to be a balance of the two.
right. Well, something I didn't know about until I went back and watched YouTube and various things in your match with Louisville when you were down 0-2. You the story is, and I know you like story, that you found a piece of paper on the officials table. Tell us that story.
Yeah. So, Alicia Glass comes in and talks to our team every other week on mindset, or not comes in, she pipes in via uh, Zoom. But we talk a lot about optimism, and I always talk about being optimistic problem solvers. That, hey, when you're in a volleyball match, like if you lose a set, it's because you ran out of time. You're like constantly trying to find a solution to this, and something is going to click. Like, to me, that's optimism. But it was actually interesting because like she came in and defined it as something inherently good is about to happen. So we go down 0-2, and like we were ahead of both of those sets. So like my message really wasn't like, hey, we need to change anything. It was just, we need to keep doing what we're doing and finish. And I just said, like, Alicia's been talking about this, and I just have a gut feeling. And I was like, came in with a smile on my face. I'm like, hey, I think something inherently good is about to happen. And they smiled at me. They're like, we were just talking about that. That's really strange. And then we came out, and I think I've heard that Louisville left a card out there, but it said something good is about to happen on the card that was left, to basically where the challenge card was. I didn't see it. Our players said this, and they came out and they're like, this is really bizarre. Like, we said it, Jamie said it, it's sitting here in the card. And I wanted to be like, that was the best coaching move of my life, that I got out there and left a card right there. But I had nothing to do with it. And again, like another fate piece that like, and again, like this is to all coaches. Like, it's really hard to win a national championship. And I realized it when I was at Nebraska the year before that, when, again, like what you had built there, I was looking at the wall and looking at how many pictures John Cook was in, and realizing how long his career was on that national championship wall. And I'm like, this is hard to do. And like a lot of stuff has to go right. I'm not saying fate has to get involved, but like, again, I remember I was telling Maddie had the flu and had to sit out of practice, and I just started laughing. Like I was walking through the hallway. I vividly remember this. I just started laughing at like literally like you can get all of this way and one small thing can cause this thing to go the other direction. And I just gave up all control at that moment. I'm like, listen, like whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen. This has been an amazing ride. It's been an amazing journey. Like, and I told our team this, like I told them that of like, hey, regardless of what happens, just go out and do everything that we can do in this moment and see what happens. And just to that point of like in that moment, it was like, I don't know if that card's not there. If I think we do, but it was just a lot of things fell into place at the right time.
This is what I'm about to say is not important. And yet
Everything you
it
say is important,
surprised
Terry.
me when they announced the all tournament team and Maddie Walk wasn't on it.
Oh,
I
right. Tell me
thought
about it.
it's important in this sense. Do these people not have any insight into the game? Do they not understand how difficult that position is to play and be
Yeah.
consistent?
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know who chooses that, and I don't want to throw anything their direction. And I think people
Well,
don't appreciate. Well, let me go back to this. I think you and I can talk as coaches. Like making something look ordinary is the definition of being good at what you do. Like that's really what it is. And like she really makes things look so consistently easy that like it's
A
hard to
proud
recognize the greatness. But like there was a moment, I don't remember what match it was, where she like took a ball from like down here and it was well below her chin and somehow found a way to get it in system back to Logan. And it's just one of those things where it looks so effortless. Like she's not going to the floor or anything. She's just able to kind of take this thing and be efficient and get it back there. And I looked at it being like, again, like I've seen a lot of good setters where I've only seen one setter that can take a ball from here and do anything back behind. And that's Maja Aganovic from Serbia. And like her ability to just take some balls in some different places or be on the plane of the net and get up high and be able to get a ball or get somebody to come over. Like there were just all these little things. And then she was just cagey in some ways that like, unless you really dissect the game and watch it really closely, it's hard to notice. So I understand and then I don't understand at the same time. Like I understood early in the season, but once we got later on and we started winning and we started hitting for the amount, I don't know, efficiencies that we hit, and she started getting the amount of assists that she did, I'm like, the stats are even saying this now. So yeah, and it's hard to choose awards. Like I'm never gonna, I don't know, throw slide at
well,
anybody that's going to do that, but she's really good.
yeah. And when I say it's not important, Jamie, when we used to give our banquet, and I probably made a mistake, but we never talked about the All-Americans or even National Player of the Year. We just talked about what the team did, and maybe that was too severe. But on the other hand, it's important for people to know, for the general public to know how difficult that position is to play. I know the play you're talking about, and if it's the one I'm thinking of, she also was about 20 feet off the net, and it was at a
Yes.
critical time, and Lednicki put the ball down.
Yep.
And the thousands of hours that it takes. And the second part of that is that you could train a lot of people and they still wouldn't have the kinesthetic awareness to know where to put the ball so that the right side player could be successful. So
Yep.
I celebrated it, and we're making progress in all these areas. I'm so impressed, not just with the season that you had, but as I've dug into the things that you've done there and how you've done it, it's I understand that if you hadn't done this, you might have been an accountant. I'm glad you chose volleyball,
You and me both.
but I think you've taken that attention to detail and applied it to volleyball. So I want to congratulate you and thank you for being a guest on Inside the Coaching Mind. And I want to thank David Young, our producer, and our assistant producer, Rocky. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for me. Let me be here.
Inside the Coaching Mind is presented by HumanX Ventures and is pleased to be a part of the Learfield Varsity Podcast Network. If you're on Facebook, look for the Inside the Coaching Mind group and join a vibrant discussion of volleyball and leadership. TerryPettit.com is where you'll find Terry's books, writings, and downloads, as well as subscription links for all your podcast apps.